I guess there's sort of an elephant in the room that's been mentioned, but we never really addressed it with you internally. The notion you mentioned after the game the other day, 1 or 2 wins, and things could have been different, seeding could have been different. So, in the team's view, the importance of the regular season, the external view has been that it doesn't maybe matter primarily either organizationally or individually. Can you take us through your thoughts on how and if that needs to change or might change?
No, we're going to look at everything, but to say that we did not philosophically take the regular season seriously, that's totally off base. And I can see why people would point to that because of the missed games. We're not a load management team. There were things that happened, and sometimes you just can't control that. I think there were still opportunities to find ways to win. A handful more games, and I'm sure every team, is going to reflect and look back on that. That's the feeling that we'll be left with, all summer long. The ifs, ands, or buts, but that's just not reality. We ended up where we were, and we ended up getting knocked out in the first round, 4-1, and that's what we'll have to, think about all summer, and then we'll spend. Once we get away from all this, we'll spend a great deal of time, figuring out how we can be better, than we were, this season. Our goal is not to fight for the play-in, every year. We know the deal here. This league has a lot of parity. It is not easy. The reality is you spend the majority of your seasons striving for that. At least us in this building, we're striving, for the ultimate prize. But the reality is the majority of the time, unfortunately, you're ending your season in a loss. And that's sometimes can send you into a maddening state because you don't want to accept it. We won't accept it. We're going to keep on striving, for that. But we're just going to have to work and find ways that we can improve all across the board.
I know each season is different, but it's 2 straight years the offense probably hasn't been where you wanted it to be. What do you see as far as room for growth or things that could be better to get it?
Yeah, I'll go into a deep dive on that. Just my early reflections on that. We had basically 3 primary offensive philosophies this season and a lot last season based on who was available. So all things considered, I thought we were making strides in any one of those areas, but the consistency, became a challenge, to overcome, and the styles of play, were different, based on who was available. So I don't want to make excuse for who's available, who's not, but we also have to look at what's real and what's not real, and if we have everybody available, what is the best plan? And that's what I will get to work on. The coaching staff will get together, quite a bit, trying to put together a better offensive or a more productive offensive plan. And then also just review what we liked. There were some good things, based on those 3 philosophies. There were some really good things out of each one of them, and we'll have to figure out what makes the most sense next season.
Kind of stay on the player availability stuff. The guys get hurt, guys get sick. That obviously that happens. How do you balance? Some of this stuff is just bad luck when you have to use 35 or whatever it was, different lineups, versus is there something you can put your finger on as to why guys just can't get back on the floor sometimes? Is there?
Yeah, we're going to look at everything because it's not all apples to apples. I think what we do in terms of getting guys ready and in shape helps with soft tissue stuff. That's the other stuff that we have to take a dive into. 2 seasons ago we were good. The last 2 seasons are a little bit skewed based on you guys that missed the entire season that weren't fully in our rotation. But that doesn't also absolve it. We want to look, at all the different angles on this. And I think what's good right now is this is becoming a league-wide thing. Everybody knows that this is a challenge. Everybody knows that this is an issue. You're paid, and everybody wants guys available all across the board, league-wide. And if you don't have guys available, it does affect things. We don't want to make excuses for that. So regardless, you have to find different ways to win. But that's a hot topic right now. I get it. So we're going to get away from it. We'll have clearer minds when we get back to it. And we're going to do everything we possibly can as an organization to find solutions, in that department.
Generally speaking, the defense started the season a little up and down, and it stabilized mostly after Christmas. A lot of the positive value on the defense came from Bam, but when you look at the unit as a whole, and this might sound strange to ask because it was a top 5 defense, did it meet your standards for the whole season? And kind of, especially after the Boston series, how would you evaluate where your defense is?
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the most consistent thing. So where we weren't necessarily able to find consistency with our 3 different offensive philosophies, we were able to find consistency more often than not on the defensive side of the floor, even though we had a couple different ways of playing based on who was available. And that typically makes sense as long as you have a group that is committed to doing tough things. There's no easy way about it. If you want to defend in this league, you have to guard the ball. You have to take away easy baskets. You have to rebound. You have to do those kind of things. And we had a group that took pride in that. So we had more consistency, defensively. And in the Boston series, we were challenged by, the best offensive team, in the league. And I thought until that last game, we did enough. And of course, we're coaches, so each game there was we felt that there was 5 or 6 baskets that we could have done better to take away, and that gets you in a better chance, to have an opportunity to win. But that said, I don't think our offense was good enough in at least 3 of the games, even if we did hold them down, to be able to really have a chance to win.
Coach, in terms of how the team is entering in the summer after losing in 5 games in the first round, I know you mentioned that you wanted the series to come back to Miami to give the crowd that that sort of complete performance. Can you just kind of talk about how this team is entering in the summer with that sort of mindset of just giving the crowd what they want?
Yeah, it's frustrating, and everybody felt it in the locker room. Our guys wanted to play well, in front of our fans, and for whatever reason this year we weren't able to find consistency, here at home. Also none of us want this to be over at the beginning of May. We don't even know what to do right now. So you're talking about you got to make, vacation plans, get out of town. It's what? Your mind's not even wrapped around that possibility. You're thinking you're going to have the next few weeks you're working, and this is the best time of year. You want to be in this, competitive cauldron. If you're watching the playoff games, that's the environment. That's what you want to be a part of, not sitting on the sidelines. So that's the frustrating part. Sometimes, the greatest frustrations and disappointments can lead to the most growth, and that's what, I'm hoping for. That the pain of this, the pain of, how we played at home, the inconsistencies, the pain of a handful of losses that we felt, potentially could have been wins, and that could have changed things in the postseason. You also don't know how that works with that sliding door. But all of this can be something you can gain something from. Once you get away from it, and then you realize, okay, there are always lessons. There's something you can take out of this. There's something you can grow from, and we'll look at everything from A to Z, as you can imagine. We're not going to do that today or tomorrow, but we have a longer off season than we anticipated. So we have several weeks and months, to figure this out.
Except you don't have several weeks and months. You have a draft, free agency, and then you have that other little thing that's going to occupy 2 months of your summer. How compressed does it get with time with your kids and decompressing and all that, plus all the autopsy analysis of the season? You do have July and August pretty much spoken for. How daunting does your schedule look?
Well, we have plenty of time. I literally wasn't planning on these next 2 months looking like this. So we have a much longer off season. I'm totally honored and excited about this summer, the training camp in Vegas, and then going to Paris for the Olympics. It's the honor of a lifetime, and being around that group and the whole environment of the Olympics. I can't wait for that, and then we'll still have 7-8 weeks after that, 7 weeks after that to prepare for the season. So we have plenty of time to dive in, and I figure I had three days to get up to speed on the draft last year. The 8 weeks leading up to that, I think I'll be just probably over confused, from over analysis. I'll stay out of the way. Like now that if I have more time, I'm probably dangerous. I'll stay out of the way of our scouting department. They do an exceptional job, Adam Simon and his staff, preparing for that draft.
Tyler entered their season obviously very motivated. Injuries kept him out for half the year, and then he's thrown into a bigger role in the first round because of other injuries. How would you assess his season? Maybe lessons he can take away from that experience in the playoffs.
Well, I think the lesson from these 5 games is going to be exponential. The way I look at it, the biggest positive is he had one game where the entire game plan is to take him out. It wasn't like it was rocket science. It was pretty. And Bam obviously was involved in every single action in one way or another. But the game plan for Boston is you take him out, that can take a significant part of their firepower out of the equation. And then to respond in a big way in Game 2 that really helped drive the win, I think is a massive positive. And I think going through those experiences, you hear it all the time, but the playoffs, reveal, the playoffs teach, the playoffs tell. And you don't really know until you go into that, type of, situation. And for him, there was much greater responsibilities because of the injuries. So he felt it in a different way. The game planning and all of that. That's going to drive him and motivate him. I know Tyler. I know how driven he is. I know what his work ethic is like. And he'll probably take about the same amount of days off that I'll take, and then he'll get right back to work and learn from these experiences. Most young players, when they make their big jumps, it's usually from some disappointments that happen in the playoffs, and that drives you with experience. It's always the best teacher, to get to another level.
So you've had to manage stars as they've entered different stages of their careers, particularly with Dwayne into his 30s. What is your expectation level for Jimmy this summer? How do you want to see him approach next season? Where would you be at with that, and where do you think that goes?
Yeah, he'll be extremely motivated. Jimmy views things like us also. He doesn't want to, have our season end early May. My expectation is, at his place in his career and his age, that he'll come into training camp in the best shape, of his career. And I think that's the goal, particularly when you get to that stage. And to help fix a lot of these things. Jimmy has a way of doing that. When he's playing at his highest level. I think from the head coach to the star player, going into whatever chapter of this is, one of the later chapters in his career. I don't want to say the final chapter, because of the kind of condition that he's in, and he can play for a long, long time. I don't want to put a ceiling on that. But this is like the sweet spot, the beauty, when you actually get an opportunity to coach and work with somebody together for 6 years. It's different than 1 year, 2 year, and it's something that most coaches and players don't get to experience, and certainly not anymore. But it was an amazing, beautiful thing when Dwayne and I got past a handful of years. Our relationship, our perspective, everything was way different and way more in unison. And when you're working, with that kind of intuitive togetherness, and not to say that we weren't, it's just my experience is when you get to those later years, it just happens. It's a symbiotic relationship. You're driving and pushing in the same direction intuitively, and I'm looking forward, to that. It goes by fast. I remember my first meeting with them, and now we'll be heading into our 6th year, working together. I think that's a beautiful thing. It's not something I take for granted, and I can't wait. I can't wait for training camp.
We know the season didn't end the way you guys wanted it to, but was there anything memorable that kind of stood out from this season to you?
Yeah, there always are. You don't want to go through 8 months, even as insane as we are in our pursuit of that championship. You don't want to go 8 months with a group in a locker room and for it to be totally meaningless and for it to be forgotten. There are the memories, the relationships, regardless of what happens, that we created, a bond. And we also had some memorable moments. A lot of them were on the road where we had to really rally around each other and had some great road wins. And you feel the locker room alive after the game, dealing with a lot of adversity. So there were some fun points, seeing different guys step up, seeing our young guys really grow. Jaime exploded onto the scene. That was obvious for everybody to see. Then he got on to people's scouting reports, then changed for a little bit. Then he was injured, and then when he came back, I really felt like he was a much better player. He was able to see things at a deeper level. Same thing with Nico. If you would have said that in the first round series last year, right when our season ended, that Nico would be our starting power forward and doing the type of scheme things that he was doing defensively in the series against Boston, and that we'd have to rely on him, in a certain way, you probably thought, like, no, that's not happening, 9 months from now. But I think him experiencing all of that, I think was really important. Seeing Bam's leadership in a different way as the team captain, that's been one of my joys, to watch him grow on and off the court, but seeing how he can influence in a different way than just, with his inspiring plays on a basketball court.
Coach, I know you talked about the fans, but do you have a specific message of appreciation towards them, creating a great environment at home for the team this year?
Yeah, we do really appreciate our fan base. It's a fan base that really buys into us, who we're about, what we're about. It's probably you hear that word culture, and you're in a different city, you're probably tired of it, But our fan base loves it. They live it. They breathe it. You can feel it, from them. So we're simpatico with our fan base, because we believe in the same things. And if I have one message, it's just we're going to do everything we possibly can, to be better for our fans at home next year.
The sample sizes on this stuff is so small every year, and there's moving pieces everywhere. Is there anything you can take away, or any evaluation you have from the team being one of the best fourth quarter and clutch teams last year to the numbers at least being towards the bottom of the league this year?
Yeah, I can't, actually, because we've already done a bunch of mini deep dives during the course of the season to try to get it back, to where we were. I also saw a stat, came from our video room, that we were at 50, the most double-digit leads, or fifth most in the league. What does that mean? I don't know. But it means that, we also weren't in as many, those clutch games, from a year ago. So I think those clutch games, the fact that we were in them all the time, it hardened us. It made us better by the second half of the season last year. This year it's a smaller sample size, and we are dealing with holding off teams with double-digit leads. We did not do that exceptionally well. And I think if that's our challenge and our issue next year, I think that's a great thing, to get control of games and then, to figure out how to finish it off. But next year is next year. Who knows what it'll be. But in the meantime, once we get back, from being away, that'll be a deeper dive into that.
And, you know, it's the off season of rumors and sources and all that stuff, but kind of seeing polls, and I don't know how scientific they are, that players in this league want to come play for you and be a part of this culture, how that happens. What does that mean to you that you've had this organization that players are still, even it's rumors, we're not saying any names, but what does that mean for you in general?
You know, I think there's different viewpoints of our organization, you know, over the years. And at some points, I think over the years, players are like, no, I don't want to be a part of that. You know, right now, I think success, you know, piques people's interest, and you know, at least hopefully, the buzzword of culture is seen as something that's where players are not being cynical about it, but seeing that hey, there's consistency there, there's reliability, and there's a commitment to try to win. It's a very competitive league. It's a hard league. And there's more parity than there's ever been, you know, right now. So hopefully, you know, our how we do things and how we operate, it's never about the coaching. It's about the entire operation, from ownership to front office to coaching to players, the type of people we get in our locker room. It all works together. And when it does, it's an amazing, beautiful thing to experience.
All right, Coach, that's it.
Okay.
Players, guys.
Thank you.